Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Fostering Student Engagement in the Classroom session. My name is Heather Summers, and I am the Middle School Science Teacher Support Specialist with Curriculum and Instruction. And I'd like to give my co-hosts a little time to introduce themselves right now as well.
I'll jump in. My name is Taylor Mayer. I work with Heather and Liz. I help social studies teachers around the district, but sometimes we veer out of those content areas and help anyone and everyone that needs help. So don't feel like you can only reach out to us just if you're a science or social studies teacher.
And my name is Liz Taurus, and these are my partners in crime, and very fortunate to work with them. We're a great team, and we're super happy to have you guys here with us today.
And we are going to start this session with a Minty activity. If you've not used Minty before, it is a testing question group collaborative interactive tool. And so what I'm going to have you do is go to minty.com. I just put the link in the chat. You can either directly click on that second link, or you can go to minty.com and type in that code. That code is 4443-5708, and that is in the chat for you guys. And what this activity will ask you to do is type in 3 things. You have like 25 letters or something, characters, about what a classroom looks and sounds like when students are engaged. I'm going to give you about a minute to do that, and then I'm going to shift screens so that you can see as people in real time are typing things in, it starts building our word art bubble. So I see collaboration and communication, as well as eye contact, active discussions, creativity, busy, calm, speaking, boisterous. So as you may be able to see, it is not necessarily, student engagement is not a one-size-fits-all kind of answer. So I'm going to go back. I will collect all of the thoughts from that word bubble and add it into our slide deck that you guys will have access to, so that you can see all of those words as we are looking through and building our plan. We are going to look at this video with Taylor.
It's with me. I'll go ahead and get us started. That's okay.
Liz, there comes the video. I'm going to go ahead and start this video for us, unless you want to talk first, Karen.
I just wanted to say, we're going to just take a minute to listen to this, and there's some very powerful voices, and our hope is that these voices help inspire you.
Dear teacher, I know it doesn't always seem like it, but I really do want to listen.
Hey, Heather, our video stopped.
I'm not looking at you. I can still listen to what you're saying.
If you tell me, sit up straight, now I have to use all of my brain.
I am very sorry. We are having some technical difficulties. Let me fix it real fast.
Yeah, go ahead and restart it. It's no big deal.
Walking in my chair. When you give me a bunch of directions, I start to think I will never remember all of this. Dear teacher, I know it doesn't always seem like it, but I really do want to listen and learn. It's just my brain is kind of different. So this is what I'd like you to know about me. I have to move, or I really can't pay attention.
Even though I'm not looking at you, I can still listen to what you're saying.
If you tell me, sit up straight, now I have to use all of my brain.
to do just that.
It makes me feel sad when you tell me to try harder, even though I've already tried as hard as I can. I actually listen better when I'm rocking in my chair. When you give me a bunch of directions, I start to think, I will never remember all of this.
Sometimes my mom or dad ends up doing all of my homework. So here's how you could maybe help.
Let me get up and move while I'm learning.
Let me look wherever I want when you talk to me.
Let me rock or slouch in my chair.
No matter what, please don't take away my recess. Give me help I could do all by myself. Make directions very short.
Just ask me, what does your brain need right now?
And one more thing. My brain might be different than yours, but it's still amazing.
Sincerely, your student.
Your student.
Your student.
Your student.
Thank you, Heather. So I know some of you guys came in a little bit late, but I think most of you were able to catch some of that video. And we wanted to start with this amazing video because it's a reminder that teaching is truly a gift. And each of our students is unique in who they are and how they learn. My brain might be different from yours, but it's still amazing. This quote really stuck out to me because it's a reminder that we are all so different. Our backgrounds are different, our experiences or lack of, our learning styles. We as adults, me and my colleagues talk about this all of the time, and we kind of bring that out in one another. And as adults, we're able to do that. So as you as a teacher, you hold such a powerful role in a child's life and can really determine what their school experience can look like and what it feels like for them. So even though these voices are a little bit younger, coming from younger students and who you might serve, because I know this is primarily secondary people, it's my belief that many of these words live in each of us at every age. So take some time to think about this as you move forward and how you support your students and their individual learning needs. So just kind of a neat video to kind of remind ourselves and a little shot in the arm
Dear
to be inspired. Okay, so we can move on to the next slide. So this is just a little overview of some of the topics we're going to touch on during our time together. We're going to start off with just a brief overview of what it takes to build a strong foundation of engagement in our classroom. We're going to look at some components of engagement. We are going to explore various engagement strategies throughout the presentation. We've already started with a couple with the Minty and using video. We will offer some tips and tricks to keep students engaged. And we've also included some resources for further learning so that you can explore this topic independently on your own, if and when you get some time. And then we've blocked off some time for some Q&A to address some of the questions you might have following our session today. Okie dokie. I feel bad because people are still joining us. Welcome for those of you who are still coming in and joining us. Okay, so now what I want you to do is just take a moment to investigate what is happening in this image that is stripped of its caption. So look at those questions on the side and kind of reflect on those and just kind of process a little bit of what you think is happening here. So if you would, I'm going to ask that you take just a moment to use a chat to write either one word or a short phrase that describes what it is that you see happening in this image. Faith, survival, just a child playing, joy, experimenting, I think risk-taking, so many of us just see a child playing, and I love that brave, that it does feel brave and courageous. Comfort, peace, yeah. So what's going on in this picture is a really cool resource from New York Times that is offered each week. A new image is posted every Monday, and its reveal is posted every Thursday that explains the backstory along with additional resources to engage students and classroom teachers. So when we introduce this, I want you to kind of think about how you might use this type of resource to spark curiosity with your students or add to a concept that you might be teaching. So think of it like, how could you use it perhaps as a bell ringer, as a homework assignment, used as a writing prompt? The list goes on, and that's the cool part about this, is how much creativity you can pull from using something as simple as an image with no caption. So keep in mind, it doesn't have to be an image from this site. It can be anything, an image from a classroom textbook, a chart, a graph, a meme that kids are all about right now. I'm guilty of it myself, or anything that can spark curiosity in our students. So before we move on, I kind of wanted to give you the answer of what this image actually is. It's pretty interesting. It's an image of a child playing and jumping on the waste products that were used to make poultry feed in a tannery in Bangladesh. The picture was taken on October 9th of 2012, or 2012, sorry. Luxury leather goods are sold across the world and are produced in the slum areas of Bangladesh. Its capital, where workers, including children, are exposed to hazardous chemicals and are often injured in horrific accidents, according to a study that was released on October 9th. The photographer who took this picture also reported that the little girl jumping from one pile to the other is a child of one of the workers. So it's just a really great site to support this type of engagement. And it's linked there for easy access for you, and just a resource for you guys to consider kind of getting that creativity going when wanting to pull that engagement with your students.
All right, let's talk about laying the foundation for engagement. Today we're going to cover a lot of fun strategies, various things you can do in the classroom. But we know that no matter how many strategies we pull into the classroom, if we don't have a strong foundation, including relationships, including the way we invite kids into the classroom, whether they feel they're safe and welcome in the classroom, it can really make or break how engaged they're going to be. I want you guys to watch this video, and as you watch this video, keep in mind what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you notice the students are doing, what you notice the teachers doing. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you to kind of drop in whatever thoughts might pop into your head, whether it's something you might have done differently, something you might be curious to try, just anything that kind of stood out to you, or something that you heard and saw within the classroom. So we're going to go ahead and play the video.
Go in. Put y. The y is here. 1. And then you can subtract it by 2, which gives you -1. Minus, wait, what? That's missing.
I think what you meant was you plug it into your equation as
x. Yes. So -2 minus -1 equals
-2 times -1 equals +2.
Yeah, use this number as the x, right? So -2 times -1 equals +2. -1
equals 1. So Eric, I saw that you took some good notes. Did this make sense? I'm not videotaping.
Okay, yeah, it did.
Okay.
It did.
Ronald, did this help you with making sense of that problem? Yes. What about you, Lynn? Yeah? Okay.
All right, so I'm going to give you guys just a couple seconds, if you wouldn't mind dropping in something you noticed, something you were maybe curious about in the chat, looking at that classroom. Lots of talking and collaboration. Students using visual model. Teamwork, engagement, checking for understanding, group work, showing the process. Some aha moments, I agree. Awesome. Okay. And I just want to point out this video is actually from Dr. Holly's YouTube channel. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but I invite you to kind of explore that channel. There's a lot of really awesome teaching modeling videos on there if that's ever up your alley. It's always nice, I feel like, to watch others teach. Helps me kind of process what some of the strategies I'm trying to bring in look like in practice. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. Like you probably noticed, this was called CLR, and I don't know how familiar you guys are with CLR. CLR stands for Culturally and Linguistically Responsive Instruction. So when we're talking about culturally and linguistically responsive instruction, we're really talking about inviting students to feel like their culture and their linguistic identity is being affirmed and validated in the classroom. And that really entails being able to understand that a lot of times as teachers, depending on our cultural and linguistic background, we have a certain set of expectations for what we think and expect students to behave like in the classroom. What I want you to invite you over the next year to do is to kind of broaden that view of what we expect from students, to maybe be a little bit more inclusive in the way that we invite behaviors and language into the classroom. So we know that they're coming from a variety of different backgrounds, especially Albuquerque's public schools, right? We have a hugely diverse population of students. So it's really important that we recognize that, we validate those identities and languages, but then we also help bridge that link between what's maybe happening culturally and what we academically need our students to be able to do in order to succeed. And today we're not really going into CLR a whole lot. If you're interested, email me. I'm happy to provide you guys with some more resources. I know APS has teamed up with Dr. Holly to do some trainings over the course of this next year. So if that's something that speaks to you, let me know and I'll help get you connected to the right people. But really, we're trying to set this foundation of, do we have these relationships and do we have an environment where students are really invited to be who they are in the classroom? Are they safe to express that? Are we creating a culture of learning that allows students to become engaged in a safe way, right? We have to be sure that our students feel like they can take those risks. Because if we can't take those risks, we're not going to be able to do things like provide a productive struggle, right? We don't want to step in and give them the answers right away. We want them to have that discourse and that dialogue because we know it can be engaging and it can be really meaningful. But if we don't have the right climate to do that, it's going to be really difficult for our students to be able to engage in that type of work. All right.
Sorry, guys, I was muted. So for this slide, I just wanted to spend a moment to remind teachers, all of the new teachers, that there is a hierarchy for how information is learned and remembered. So we only process and retain 10% of what we read, 30% of what we see, 70% of what we discuss with others, and 95% of stuff that we teach to someone else. So if you are striving for retention and memory becoming part of your long-term memory, you can't have just a reading that's done in class and expect students to retain all of that information. Another interesting fact that I found was we forget 56% of information that we learned after 1 hour, 66% after a day, and 75% after 6 days or a week without reinforcement or some connection to prior knowledge. So as we go through our lesson planning and curriculum and teaching for this year, just keep in mind that there is a difference in how we approach making students learn and make sense of their learning. There are a video here of a boring economics teacher, and what I want you to look at as we go through this is the class student-centered? Is it collaborative? What are the teacher's questioning strategies and how much wait time does he give to the class? And then think, would this be a engaging class based on what we see?
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the Great Depression, passed the tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which anyone raised or lowered raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone seen this before? The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point on the revenue curve, you will get exactly the same amount of revenue as at this point. This is very controversial. Does anyone know what Vice President Bush called this in 1980? Anyone? Something DOO economics. Voodoo economics.
So as we watched that video, was it student-centered? Was it collaborative? And was there any wait time allowed between questioning? Go ahead and drop your thoughts into the chat. I see that some of you already are. Yes, we love a little light humor in the morning.
And Philip, I think, has a question. Go ahead, Philip.
Oh, no, I didn't know that we were going to put it in the chat. I'm just sticking with my original answer before we watch the video.
You're going to say no.
Yeah, I'm going to go with no. No all
Big
around.
cat across the board, no.
Yeah.
So as we watched this, we did not see any of those things. So I would say that student engagement was pretty low. What we're going to look at in the next slide is exactly what we're seeing through this lens, through a different pedagogy. So I'm going to turn it over to Taylor.
I'm just cracking up at some of these comments because I feel like I had a lot of those same experiences in college as well. And I think sometimes as secondary teachers, especially, I see teachers coming into the classroom and we're tempted sometimes to lecture like we sat through in college. But I know even as an adult, that was difficult for me. So I can't imagine how it feels for some of our students, and especially some of our students with different learning styles and with different neuro abilities. So we're going to be looking at Schmitty's levels of engagement. We're not going to go super in depth with this. There is an article linked on this slide, if you guys have the slide deck open, if you want to explore this a little bit more, just talking about different types of engagement, whether it's behavioral, cognitive, or emotional engagement, right? We have to kind of look at the whole child. We need to be engaged in different ways. So looking at these levels of engagement, try and think of an aha or something that maybe stands out to you while you're watching this. And maybe some strategies or some lessons maybe you've been a part of in the past that maybe met some of these high levels of engagement.
Select these levels of engagement in less than 5 minutes, I promise. If you watch this scene from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you'll notice that even in the midst of a boring lesson, none of the students are actually misbehaving. They're quiet. Nobody's tossing spitballs or playing those paper football games or checking their cell phones because, well, the cell phones back then were the size of a brick. Remember the Zach Morris phone. But most of the students are essentially following the rules. They aren't engaged. But what are they? Well, some seem to be retreating. A few seem to be playing the game of school, but nobody is actually committed to the learning. Well, here's where Schlechty's levels of engagement becomes helpful. It provides a useful framework for thinking about what it means for students to be genuinely engaged in their learning. Schlechty defines it this way. Engagement is active. It requires the students to be attentive as well as in attendance. It requires students to be committed to the task and find some inherent value in what he or she is being asked to do. The engaged student not only does the task assigned, but also does the task with enthusiasm and diligence. In 2002, Philip Schlechty developed a framework for thinking about student engagement based on two core ideas of attention and commitment. At the bottom, you have rebellion, which involves diverted attention and no commitment to the task. This is the student who seems to be acting out and causing disruptions, and as a result, they fail to learn from the task. Next, you have retreatism with no attention and no commitment. Unlike the rebellion, this student in retreat is not actively disrupting the learning, but instead seems to be kind of checked out. This student is often distracted and emotionally withdrawn from the task, and as a result, this student learns little or nothing from the task. At the next level, you have ritual compliance. This involves both low attention and low commitment. Unlike retreatism, a ritually compliant student doesn't completely check out, but instead is doing the bare minimum to avoid confrontation. This student will learn at a low level, and the task will not be retained over time. Next is strategic compliance. Often this looks like engagement because the student might be performing at a high level, but it's not. Here, the student has high attention on the task, but low commitment to what he or she is doing. This is the student who is playing the game of school, focused on things like grades, parental approval, rewards, and class rank. But the learning isn't intrinsically rewarding, and as a result, this student will often learn at a high level, but fails to retain the learning over time or transfer it to a new context. And then finally, you have engagement. This requires both high attention and high commitment. Here, a student completely buys in out of a strong sense of intrinsic motivation, and this includes meaning and choice and challenge. This student will continue focusing even when the task gets more complex and challenging, and often they're going to choose to learn even when it is ungraded. This student will learn at a deep level, and the transfer will continue to new contexts. And this is why it's important that we as teachers focus on how to make the subject intrinsically engaging. And this happens when we tap into student curiosity and creativity and purpose. And when this happens, students are more likely to grow into passionate, lifelong learners.
All right, I'm going to give you a minute. Well, not a full minute. I'm going to give you a few seconds to kind of drop in something that stood out to you in that video, maybe a component of engagement that you hadn't considered before. Something that surprised you. Give you a few seconds to just pop your thoughts into the chat. Yes, I noticed that too, Adrienne. I think that's interesting when students look like what we expect them to, but they're not necessarily engaged, or it's not going to be transferable knowledge, right? Being engaged versus formally doing the work, playing school. I was that student too. I like Eric's comment about getting hyped to kind of pull them back in. That's a great strategy. And being bouncy, right? I think some of those words we saw in Minty, like eye contact, sometimes that is a sign of being engaging, right? But we also watched that video where some students are uncomfortable with that, and some cultures aren't okay with that either. So we have to be respectful of what engagement might look like for different students. Yes, and when the higher learning's not happening, we're not going to retain the info, or we're not going to be able to transfer the skills that we're using in the class. All right, awesome. So Right now, we're going to jump into an activity to do with you guys. I invite you to look at that article if it's something that's appealing to you. But right now, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Liz so we can get started on our collaborative work.
Okay. Okay, so I love reading those comments. Sorry, I was a little bit engaged in reading what you guys are saying because it's pretty powerful. So anyways, really quick, what we're going to do is we're going to break out into small groups and we're going to do an old school technique, a jigsaw. It still works. And we're going to jigsaw a short article that investigates opportunities for detecting student engagement in the classroom from the moment students walk in your door until the moment that they leave. When you get to your breakout group, you're going to take a minute, introduce yourselves, kind of acquaint yourselves with one another. Each group's going to read an assigned piece of the article, as well as the introduction and the conclusion. In a moment, Heather's going to explain how we're going to break things up, so be patient with me on that. Once your group is finished with that short read, just take a few minutes to kind of flush out what you read and kind of discuss that for a moment. And then what we're going to ask you to do is we're going to ask you to add your thoughts, ideas, and questions to a Jamboard that's linked on the slide deck. And I believe we're going to put it in the chat as well. In your breakout, we're going to give you about 6 minutes to do this. The article is really short and the sections are short. So I think it's doable within that time frame. When we come back, we're going to do a brief share out with our whole group. So I'm going to hand it over to Heather to kind of do the little nuts and bolts of how we're getting and where we're going.
Perfect. So the article is linked in step 2 of this. I will put it in the chat too, but I don't have it particularly handy. I dropped in. Okay, thanks, Taylor. I dropped into the chat the Jamboards for our rooms 1 through 8, and our tech goddess right now is going to open those open those breakout rooms for us. Your breakout room number and your jam slide number will be the same. So if you're in breakout room 1, you're going to go to the first sheet of the Jamboard, the first frame. And then up at the top of the Jamboard, there is a little square icon with arrows on either side to move to the other slides. So if you have any problems, just go ahead and stay in this main room and we'll be able to answer them for you to get you where you need to go. And you'll have about 6 minutes in the breakout rooms. Okay, Tammy.
Are there any questions before you guys go?
Sorry, I already opened it.
That's okay.
I have a quick question. How do I get to the Jamboard room 9 through 20, or are we all going to the same rooms?
We're all going through 1 through 8.
1 through 8, okay.
Bye.
Did everyone else get the invite for the small groups? Because I still see there's a huge chunk of people that haven't left. There should be an invite on your screen to send you off.
Charles, do you have a go-to breakout room icon on your screen?
Aha. Yes, sorry. Wasn't looking in the right spot.
You're good. Just wanted to make sure. James, Daniel, do you have a breakout room blue square on your screen somewhere?
I think I'm going to start the 6 minutes now.
I I think Tammy set it up for 6 minutes in the breakout rooms.
And I will fix it right now.
Oh,
How about
perfect.
that?
Thanks for that.
And I will save my changes. There, I restarted the 6 minutes.
Heather or Taylor, I know I'm supposed to flush out the whole group. I don't have access to the Jamboard for whatever reason. I'm not able to open it. Can one of you guys do that? Because I won't be able to see it unless you display it on the...
I can display it on the main screen too. I have it up and ready to go.
Okay, that'd be perfect. Thank you.
Do you want me to just go through all of them when we come back to whole group?
Sure. I mean, just brief. I mean, what are your thoughts, Taylor?
I think that's
What
fine.
if we click on each one and ask somebody from each group to share? Quick.
That works.
One insight, or one comment.
People are adding them. Yay, yay. Okay.
You're making me dizzy.
I'm sorry, I'm done now. I meant to warn you and then I totally spaced it.
Oh.
Now everyone's seasick. I apologize.
So Savannah was able to get on.
I'm so glad. But it's so frustrating to not be able to just make it work.
Let's
Yeah,
not
I was just
forget
gonna say
we're recording.
Slip to say which one she was trying to attend to because we couldn't get her in at the beginning. So I don't know if you have that one that came from the beginning. But we don't need that recorded.
It has been recorded, but I'll just mark that we need to edit that out.
Okay, thanks.
Liz, is it still telling you that today?
Yeah.
I would put in
A work order.
an IT ticket.
Okay.
Yeah, because I have never seen that. I don't know about Heather, but I have never seen that.
Well, and I created the Jamboard initially, and then just one night, Heather and I were working, and I could not access it after that. It was bizarre. They can, which is good.
Hmm. Okay, that is weird, Liz, because I can open it just like everyone else.
And
So
Liz created it.
So Heather, I am going to review this with them, or you are?
I don't care. Do you want me to?
Okay. How many Jamboards are there now? 2?
There are 8. No, there's just the 8 slides of the Jamboard. Because we only had 30 people, so it's like 3 or 4 people per room.
Okay.
But it doesn't look like, okay, Jen, I'm moving them again.
We're going to delete this, right?
Delete what? Yes, we're going to delete.
Our conversation. Okay. Yes. We have the beginning end group, and then we have the 4 sections, right? Section 2.
Yes, we have 8 rooms.
I'll pull up the article just so I have it. I just want to make sure I cover all of them.
Okay, you're going to do it? It looks as though everyone's written at least one Post-it note on theirs. So either you can ask one of them to share it out, or you can just pick one from this.
And we have 1 minute left.
Okay, everyone close their eyes because I'm going to go back through them fast. Okay, I'm done.
I think Eric needed the Jamboard links.
As we're all coming back, feel free to look at the other slides, but we're going to do a whole group share out. So one person from each of your groups, be ready to share some information about your slide.
Do we have everybody back?
It looks like we have everyone back, Liz.
Okay, great. I know that was fast and furious. Thank you for participating in that. And we just want to quickly do a quick whip around to see if someone would be willing to just do like an aha or a share out, starting with each section. If someone from the beginning end of class could maybe offer something that they pulled from that.
I think I was in group 1, and neither one of us had the link to the Jamboard, and so we just spent the time getting to know each other.
That's perfect. That's okay. I apologize for you not being able to access that link. And anyone else? I don't know how many people were in that. Was it just those 2 people, Heather, that were in that group?
So we had 2 groups that did beginning and end of class. Anyone from room 2?
I was in group 2. So we had the beginning and the end, and at the end it noted that when the students leave, they don't look like somewhere they clocked out, so their brain wasn't fried at the end. So they were like ready for the next classes. So they were engaged through it and didn't like clock out. And then at the beginning, they say hi, even no matter what mood they're in, they say hello. And then they sit down and start working, and they have all their materials and stuff. And then another one in my group mentioned that they're good spirited, and they have eye contact, and they're welcoming or engaged before leaving in the right mind. So that was like mine with the brain being fried.
Thank you for sharing that. And keep in mind, kids who are coming in and are not engaged or maybe not giving you eye contact, take special note of those students, because something may have transpired if your first period prior to coming to school that day or in the period before, something may have happened in the passing period on their way to your class. So always kind of get to know your students and read those things so you can address that as they enter your classroom. So I appreciate you bringing those pieces up. What about the next session during the teacher-directed instruction?
I can talk for our group.
Thank you.
So we had the section that was talking about during the teacher-directed instruction, and I think I really appreciated about how the article mentioned that a lot of people think that this is just like the boring part of teaching where it's just like the teacher talking, but it talks about how, one, it is important, but two, it can also be engaging, and three, kind of cues to check the engagement are like the emotional, behavior, and cognitive responses of students. So how are they responding with their emotions, their behaviors, and then their cognition? And then it just kind of had some indicators for each of those three. One of the things that someone in my group put, it's one of the yellow sticky notes that says it seems very idealistic. And I appreciated that note because as a new teacher, I always felt guilty if my lesson wasn't like super fun and engaging and, kids were having fun. And I think that, it's a tricky line because yes, we want to be engaging, but not every single thing we do has to be fun, quote unquote. And so kind of finding the balance of engagement doesn't also necessarily mean every single thing is fun. And not every day is going to be perfect or successful. Engagement is going to, shift moment to moment. And so I think that as new teachers, we need to remember that.
Absolutely. And I think take that weight off your shoulder because you're absolutely right. There are moments and, you need to find those opportunities for that engagement, but then there's a time to receive that information. And that's a powerful piece that you just brought up. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else? I know we're kind of running a little short on time from that second group. I don't want to leave anybody out. All righty. We're going to move on to group 3 during the group activities. Does anybody want to share?
Yeah, I can share.
Okay, great. Thank you.
In this section, it's talking about during group activities, how to look for student engagement. So there's 3 different types of engagement: emotional, behavioral, and cognitive. And you can be individually engaged in any of these areas, but kind of the goal is to, and for best learning, is to be engaged in all 3 ways. So for emotional, students are interacting with others, offering input, speaking kindly. Behavioral, they're contributing to discussion, listening to others. And then cognitive, they're taking notes, offering insightful comments, and pulling in previous learning. And someone in the group was talking about how group activities really aren't all for all students, particularly neurodivergent students. It can be a really big struggle. And so I think that's why it's important that group activities aren't the end-all be-all for engagement, because that's not how all students learn best. So just making sure that you're doing a variety of activities. You're not only doing group work, you're not only doing individual work, you're not only doing paired work, you're kind of offering a selection of all 3. That way you can capture the most students possible. And that way it doesn't get boring and become unengaging. Even if your activities are fine, doing the same thing every day can get old.
Thank you. I appreciate you kind of thinking broadly, Alexis, and not just narrowing in on just one way of doing group work and that being the only way. And so I think the points you guys brought up are really critical pieces. And it's making me think of the video that Taylor shared with us earlier. That's a form of group work, but it also allowed for that individual piece. So yeah, I thank you so much. Great feedback. And we're going to move on to the last. Is that the last one or is there one more? One more.
Is there anything else that anyone would like to share from the Breakout Room 6?
No, I would say that Ariel and I pretty much did the same exact thing they were doing. We listed the 3 types of engagement, and we were just going through and like making that list of how to determine that kids are that way. So virtually the same exact thing.
Perfect.
Thank you, Kayla. Sorry about that. Okay, so the next one is during independent work time.
Okay, so we were just talking about how when students are working independent, I think it was a good segue what was just said by Alexis about, some students will prefer, independent over work as a group. But we just really talked about the different, how to see that students are engaged is if they're even discussing with you, the teacher, or with peers when they're working together, or when, we're having a class discussion, or they're doing independent work and they like to get feedback from each other. Some things listed in the article: they seek out extra material on the subject, they use the correct tools and methods, or they use tools and methods. And then kids are just active in the discussion when doing independent work. So, and they will ask questions when they need to.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. Did the other group want to add?
My major takeaway from it was, at least when it comes to the beginning of student engagement, was positivity when the student comes into the classroom. So if that student has a positive attitude when they walk into your classroom, it tells you that on a regular basis you must be doing something right as far as student engagement.
I like that. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Shows that they really want to be there. They're happy and excited to come to your classroom. I think that's everybody. Thank you guys so much for being such active, participants in that. It really makes it for a rich conversation. And I think we're going to move on.
Right. So I'm going to go through this really quickly because we're running short on time, and I want to give you guys a couple of minutes to ask some questions or share anything. So this is just kind of an overview of some of the strategies we use. There's a few in there that we could have easily incorporated, like assigning roles in the groups. We know that's a way of assigning accountability. And doing things like text-dependent questions, especially when we're talking about maybe some of that whole group time or independent work time. Those are ways that we can ensure that students are really being engaged and having to dig back into the material, because like Adriana said, sometimes it's not engaging, right? Like sometimes we have chunky material that we just have to get through, but we can build in engaging strategies. And it doesn't mean creating a whole lesson plan. It can be a questioning technique. So I want you to kind of broaden your scope of what engagement means, and remember that it can literally be something as simple as asking the right question. So these are just some of the ones we threw in today. These are things that we picked off of Hattie. I don't know how familiar you guys are with John Hattie's work and the indicators of student success, but we know that things like Jigsaw, even though it's been around forever, we also know that it's a really powerful tool because our students are coming to the rest of the class as teachers, right? And we know that was one of those high indicators of remembering and retaining information, is being able to teach it yourself. So building in activities like Jigsaw or summarization, even though those sound so rote and they sound like boring things we've done forever, if you use them the right way and you use them in an engaging way or in a way that invites student curiosity or student choice, we can get along for our buck by just using those strategies. All right, and I think we're gonna probably skip this video. I wanna have time for your questions. Watch it when you have time, it's hilarious. But just some quick tips and tricks, be animated. And I think we talked about that a lot today, but students get bored easily, and the more crazy and cuckoo you can be, the better. I used to have dresses for every occasion. I had an aquarium dress, I had a space dress, I had a science dress, I had a math dress. So figure out a weird way to get their attention, whether it's, funky shoes, socks, be loud, use weird voices. I know we get so stuck up in our heads about being an adult when you're around kids, play. They will be so much more engaged with you if you can just be genuine and goofy and silly with them. All right, and I think that's it on our content. I don't want to throw us over, so we're going to open it up to you guys these last few minutes. If you want to ask questions, if you want to share anything, share a strategy you guys use or something you found success with, and then we'll kind of dismiss you in a couple minutes. And here's our contact info in case that's helpful for you guys.
Please don't hesitate to reach out, just like we ask our students to ask questions, not be afraid. We're asking the same of you. Please reach out to us. We love to partner with you. I think Eric has a question. Go ahead, Eric.
Once again, big finger, small button. I'm telling you, it's just insane. Actually, no, what I was going to say, I was curious how this was going to apply to my particular program that I'm teaching in. And engagement is a huge part of what we do. Social emotional learning is a huge part of what we do. And, you know, some of the strategies that I was reading in that article, I was speaking with Kelly about, I was like, well, is that a fair way to gauge this? But thinking in hindsight now, it's like, well, yeah, in level of engagement, if students asking you questions, if students are further inquiring about whatever content that's just been presented, they're engaged. And, you know, and with my guys being, having social difficulties in general, you know, they present various levels of anxiety, but it seems to be really effective by being just a little bit silly, a little bit having humor. Humor is my probably number one go-to, you know, providing a actual very strict structure on top of that, and they seem to respond to that. That's just for my particular population that I have to deal with, which is just a little bit offset of the general pop. So, but no, thank you guys. Thank you guys. This was helpful.
I love that,
Thank you,
Eric.
Eric.
Those are great points. Philip?
To kind of voice and piggyback off of Eric there for a second, relationships are our profession. If we don't connect, they're not interested. They're not going to listen to what we have to say. We can't teach. They don't learn. That's how it is. Being silly is probably the most fun part about this job. And when teachers say, I don't smile until winter break, like, think of how far winter break is into the year, you know?
Yeah.
I think teachers tend to forget to let their students know that they are people. Mm-hmm. Students don't relate to walls. They relate to the person. And so I think it's a message that I take into every year is like, you have to let your students know that you're a person. You're going to have off days. You're probably going to cry in front of them. And it's something not school related. I was at one point notified that my grandmother passed away in the middle of a lesson. And I told them what happened and they understood. So showing that you're a person with your kids is probably the biggest tool that you will have in your belt, because you can read all of these scholarly articles telling you how to do it, what you need to do, but it's your classroom. Yeah. It's your relationships with your kids. And I also think that knowing that every day is not going to be perfect, you are going to have those crapshoot kind of days, just being able to adapt and read the room might be the way to go. So even though you guys were the ones leading this whole thing, unofficial, official homework assignments, watch how improv actors work. If you haven't seen Whose Line Is It Anyway, that is what teaching is. Because if you're going to be a by-the-book teacher and you have to present everything on slideshow, we all know APS Wi-Fi. We all know the internet. It's going to go out. How do you work around that? That's Absolutely. The adaptation that I don't think is really taught or discussed in PDs. But in my experience, I mean, I'm going into my 4th year and I'm a theater actor first, or I was in theater before going into teaching. And I think that helped out a lot. So get to know your kids, be human with them, and be able to adapt.
So true, Philip. That authenticity and vulnerability, right? And for those of you that need to leave, feel free to leave. Adriana, if you want to share.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to share a strategy that I found last year and used that is like something I absolutely adore now. And it's part of my class routine. I start every class with like, I'm a language arts teacher, so reading is my favorite thing. We always start with 10 minutes of reading, but then right after that, we do attendance questions every single day. And I used to just like take attendance like randomly throughout the class quietly, like while they're working. But then when we were all virtual and like I needed strategies of like, how do I get to know my kids when they're on a screen? I started, I stole this from another teacher, but it's where I ask like a get to know you kind of question every single day. And then I like read the names of the students. And so everyone has to answer. So like, you know, they can be like random get to know you questions. It can be like this or that. Like, do you like waffles or pancakes? Are you a morning person